sure you get this all the time from novice clients, bodybuilders, even athletes. Of, I want to get bigger and I want to get leaner at the same time.
The first thing I would say is your progress is going to be very incremental. So you're kind of chasing. I grew up on a farm. You're chasing two rabbits, and that's not always ideal.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can gain muscle and lose body fat simultaneously. 10, 15 years ago, most of us in this space didn't think that was possible. But as the years have gone on, we have more and more evidence that it's possible. While it's possible, I still suggest and advise people it can happen, but it's the exception. Like it's not the expectation, but it can happen.
You can hit the bullseye, but it's not the easiest one to aim for. So let's make a bigger target.
Yes, yeah. I just, as a researcher, I go back to some research. If you have people that are not currently eating a high protein diet, and when I say high, like a typical 1.2 grams per kg is average. If you can get people to just increase that from 1.2 grams per kg to 1.8 grams per kg, that alone, according to 2 studies that I'm aware of in humans, that alone has caused increases in lean tissue mass, losses in body fat. So protein's a pretty amazing macronutrient, especially for people just being introduced to this concept of performance nutrition, physique nutrition. So that's a great starting point. Like, we're not going to change hardly anything other than, getting you in the weight room, which that alone will change your physique. But just the protein aspect alone is really cool, what it does to body recomposition, and it facilitates that. Other than that, what we know, the more trained you are, the more years of resistance training you have, the less likely it is that you're going to be able to gain muscle and lose body fat. It's much more prevalent in people who are newer to training. But at the same time, it can still happen even in resistance trained individuals.
Yeah, it's a great insight there, particularly around the protein. I think even performance staffs and coaches, which often get a little bit left behind when we're talking about athletes, right? It's like the staffs don't get the same level of attention. But there's, like, the general population struggling with weight gain and visceral adiposity and lack of sleep and all these types of things. And so, like you said, obviously the lifting's great, but even just getting that protein up from 1.2 grams per kilo up to 1.8 is a pretty nice way for them to be able to change body composition, right?
Yes, yeah, that alone, no exercise, there's evidence that's reported muscle mass gains, reductions in body fat.
And with protein intake, I mean, we see gram per pound thrown around a lot. I've had Stu Phillips and Rob Morton on talking about protein supplementation and sort of those marginal gains as you go up that bell curve towards even 2.2 grams per kilo or a gram per pound. Obviously, in physique nutrition, going above that when they're in a leaning out phase, there's some benefit. Can you talk a bit about those kind of smaller gains that are on the upper side of the intake?
Yeah, and you mentioned 2 researchers that's to a large extent has informed my opinion on this, especially Dr. Phillips. So some of their work and just my own reading into this research, and I mean, I've done several protein studies myself.
Sure.
If your goal is to maximize lean mass, lean tissue gains, it appears as though 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight is what we would need to maximize the lean tissue adaptations to your training.
Yep.
So why would we ever go above that? Well, from a physique science perspective, I believe that there are other benefits that, as you said, the more and more you get, the less and less the benefit, but there's still a benefit. So I think you use the word marginal benefits.
Yeah.
So the more and more you take, the less and less the benefit, but there's still a benefit. So I would suggest up to a gram per pound, which is 2.2 grams per kg. And what that's helping with is in several studies, one of them coming from my own lab and one of our protein titration studies, is a loss of body fat. So, and this is in resistance trained people. Now, I don't think we know the mechanism. It probably has a lot to do with the amount of calories it takes for the body to digest, absorb, process
Yeah.
handle that excess protein. So that's part of it. But going up and up past 1.6 has a body composition improvement, less and less the more you get, even if it's not necessarily a muscle tissue benefit.
Fantastic. And we pivot to carbohydrate intake, because that's definitely one that there's a large bandwidth. You think about intakes from a low carb diet to the general population to, Tour de France, 15 or 18 grams per kilo in a tour stage, which is kind of out of this world. Seen some work. Dr. Andrew Chappelle was on previously talking about elite bodybuilders in the UK consuming about 5 grams per kilo, I believe, of carbohydrate. Team sport athletes are informed by people around them, friends, families. Lower carb diets are still quite popular. When you start to look at carbohydrate intake, and you maybe first talk about kind of physique nutrition, and then I'll pick your brain on that physiology side of obviously the accelerations, decelerations. We think of basketball or hockey or American football and some of the demands there.
Yeah, so on the physique side, what I see in my lab is generally between 3 and 5 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight. That just is where most people land.
Yeah.
Obviously, for endurance athletes, that would be considered low. And one thing I've noticed just with like nutrient timing. So in the physique world, getting carbs and protein after your workouts is like, it doesn't matter. It matters every time when you're a sport athlete, based on the research that I've read. Now, if you're just a bodybuilder, the research doesn't support protein timing or nutrient timing, protein and carbs. So it's kind of interesting. If you're a bodybuilder, yes, I can't say, well, here's 3 studies that say the timing's important. But anytime that we have an athlete or somebody that's trying to perform better, and I am admittedly, this is limited research, but the research is pretty consistent. Nutrient timing, carbs plus protein, pre, post, or post mainly, their performance is improved. So there's a big difference between a physique athlete and the nutrient timing research and a sport athlete with nutrient timing research.